So this video is about reading pitches on the staff. Are you excited? We have to learn some background information first, or orient ourselves. First thing is, what is a staff? You've probably heard this word before, but just to clarify, a staff is this. It's 5 parallel lines going together. Pitch then is how high or low something sounds. And that's all dependent on frequency and how the waves move, how fast they curve, all of those things. But just by having a staff doesn't actually tell you what pitches are whenever they're on a staff. What you need is a clef sign. And we've talked about those in previous videos, but now we're going to use them on a staff. So one thing that may or may not seem intuitive to you is that we have lines and spaces on our staff. I told you that there were 5 parallel lines that are going, but there are also spaces in between them. So if something were to be on a line, on this black line here, it would be called something, but if it was in between this line and this line, it's a space, and it's called a different note. So keep that in mind as we're looking at different clefs. There are lines and spaces, each called something different. So we're going to start with the treble clef because that's going to be our most common clef to talk about, and then we'll move on and get a little crazy from there. So the first thing I said is we're going to start with the treble clef. Now, there are different ways of learning what the lines are called. You've probably heard different things. I actually took a survey on Facebook to find some ideas of different ones that we can use to be a little more exciting. So my favorite ones are the following 2. 8th grade boys dance funny and evil grandpa's bizarre dumpster fires. They both sounded funny, so I chose them. You can use anything you want to remember that the lines are called E, G, B, D, F, going upwards. I know it might make more sense to talk going down like we read a book, but that's not how it works with the musical staff. We're going up for this mnemonic. E, G, B, D, F. So my favorite is 8th grade boys dance funny because it just sticks in my head. So what that means is the very first line is always going to be E in the treble clef. G, grade, boys, B, dance, D, funny, F. And we're going up. So no matter where this little circle note is, that's the note that we have. So if it's on this line, it would be called B because it's on the 3rd line and it's 8th grade boys. If it was on this line, it would be 8th grade boys dance funny, F. And that would be an F. This is going through the line here. It's on the line, so it's an F. Again, it could go be anywhere. If it's here, then it's E, 8th. That is how you read them. Now, that is just the lines. There's a separate thing to know for the spaces. So if we go to the spaces just spell face. I don't have a really clever mnemonic for that. It's just face. You know how to spell face. You can remember the word face. So we, again, start from the bottom and go up. So the first space is called F. Second space is A. Third space is C. And the fourth space is E. So if this note is anywhere on any of the spaces, you'll know what it is because third space, F-A-C, face. It's the letter C. If it's on a different space, this one, the first one, again, we're spelling face, so it would be an F. If it was up here, it would be an E. So take a few seconds. I'm going to test you on either a line or a space, and you tell me what it is. So pause it after I show you, and then I'll tell you the answer. Here's the first one. A. Now here's a tricky one since it's on a line. If you remember, our lines are called 8th grade boys dance funny. So starting at the bottom, we have 8th grade boys dance. So it would be D. And it's on a line. F, because it's on the first space. F for face. This one is on a line, so you need your mnemonic again, starting at the bottom. 8th grade boys dance funny, so it is an F. The goal is to eventually have this all memorized and not have to do that mnemonic in your head every time you try and figure this out, but it's a great way to start. So that way, figure out whether it's a line or a space, and then what note it is. So that's how that works on this treble clef staff. Now there are some additions to that, and they are called ledger lines. Now ledger lines are ways to expand the staff so that we can play more notes, because mostly every instrument can play more notes than just what can fit on these 5 lines. So we need a way of depicting that. And those are ledger lines, and they can continue up and up and up and up. But they're going to use the same idea of the mnemonic. We're just going to keep going with our alphabet. As a quick reminder, remember that we don't have the letter H. We had to start over at the beginning, but it's going to be the same principle. So for this one, you're imagining that there is a 6th line that is parallel to the other 5. So that's showing you, and it's showing you that it's on the line. So what we do know is that the first line on the staff is E for 8th grade boys dance funny. So we have E on this line, but we're going down lower this way. Now remember that this is also like the piano, and we're going left. So thinking of our alphabet, since we're going down, we're going to go backwards in the alphabet. So we have E, and then what would happen next would be a space, and that would be the letter D, because D comes before E. And then we have what would be this line, and the letter that comes before D is C. So this is actually a C. And if you count upwards from there, C is this line, D is this space, and then E, the one that we learned, is this first actual line on the staff. Same thing happens over here going the opposite direction. This is higher than what our normal staff shows. So we have to figure out what that is, and it is on a line again. So we're going to start with the top line that we know, which is F, 8th grade boys dance funny. So we start with F, and then we use our alphabet, and we go to the right, or increasing in the alphabet. So we have F as our line, then there would be a space here, and the letter that comes after F is G, and then the letter that comes after G is A. So this is an invisible line here, going parallel again, that would be A. So this is an A. So we can use ledger lines and a lot more lines than that for extending the staff. And again, we're going to get to the point where you can memorize these and you don't have to count them, but that's how that works. All right, so we've talked about the treble clef. Now we're going to go on to the bass clef. Yay. So bass clef has, again, lines and spaces, but it's a different mnemonic because it's a different clef. Remember that the clef tells you how to interpret the staff. Remember, this is going to be lower. It's going to be our bass voices. All right, so our new mnemonic for bass clef lines is good burritos don't fall apart. Starting again at the bottom and going up, good G, burritos don't fall apart. So we do the same thing. When this little dot or note is on a line, we figure out what that is. So good burritos don't would make this a D. If it was up here, good burritos don't fall apart. That would make it an A. So it works the same way, we just have a different mnemonic for the bass clef. So there are lines and there are also spaces on the bass clef. Spaces, I learned, is all cows eat grass. Now you can also just remember one of them and then fill in the letters in between. If our lines in the bass clef are good burritos don't fall apart, this is G, you know that the very next letter in the alphabet, because we don't have an H, is A. So you would only need to remember one of them. But same rule applies. If this is on a space, all cows eat, so it would be an E. Again, remembering that we're going upwards. Now, just like we had with the treble clef, there are ledger lines in the bass clef as well, and the same rule applies. So this is on a line, so we're going to remember our lines first to figure this out. Good burritos don't fall apart, which means A is our top line, then that would be a space, which would be the letter B coming after A, and then the line would be C. Same thing for down here when we're going lower, going to the left on our keyboard. Our lowest line is G, good, and we're going to go backwards in our alphabet. So G, F would be this space here, and then E is this line. So this would be an E, and this would be a C. So that's the treble clef and the bass clef. Now we're moving on to the trickier clefs. You're going to see less of them, but you need to be aware how they work. As you learned from a previous video, this is an alto clef. It looks kind of funny and it has an arrow right here. Now I don't have a mnemonic for this one because the goal of this clef is to look where the arrow is pointing. And the arrow is pointing to this line, which makes it C. You remember one of the AKA words for the alto clef is C clef because it's telling you where C is. So this line is going to be C. Then you use your alphabet going up and going down to figure out all the other lines and spaces. And I have them here on the side just so you can check it out. But if, oh no, it's not what I wanted to move. If we moved our note over here, we can see on the side that it's an E, but we can also tell by finding the arrow, which tells us this is C, and then counting up or to the right. The letter after C is D, E. That makes this an E. Same thing for down here. Trickier, we're going backwards in the alphabet. This is a C. Always find your C, then go backwards in the alphabet. B, A, G. This would be a G. And then there are also ledger lines with this too, but you get the picture of how that works. Keeping in mind always that we're going upwards for figuring out our letters. Alright, that's the alto clef, and then finally we have the tenor clef. Tenor clef, again, same key as finding where C is. You find this arrow pointing to this line, which is C, and then you know all your other letters that way, going up and down. So if this is C, that makes this a D and an E, just how your alphabet works. Back to C, B, A, and on from there. So again, now you know your clefs. You figure out how to read the staff by what clef is there first, then figuring out the names of the lines and the spaces. I promise you that the more you do this, it'll become memorization for you, so you won't have to do all cows eat grass or 8th grade boys dance funny. You can, again, use whatever mnemonic you want to remember the order, but we're eventually getting to the goal of memorizing them so you can just look at the staff and identify what the letter is.